Today we're going to start with points, lines, and angles so that we can develop into naming angles, adding angles, finding all the angles in a triangle. See the word angle and triangle, how that cool works out. So this should be a review. This is something that you probably had in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, possibly 8th grade, but maybe not. And now again, because you're going to know this, because someday you're all going to be in geometry, and you need to have a basis for this information. So first thing is definitions for words, because that's pretty much what you need to know. So a point. A point is simply a location in space. Point A, point B, point C, point D, point E, point F. Just a spot in space. And it's represented by a dot and named with a letter. Example, point A or point B. So it'll be a big black dot and have a letter by it, and that's called a point. And you simply label it as point A or point B or point C or point D or whatever the letter is above it. That's a point. So a line is a collection of points that go on forever and ever in both directions. Okay, so it's never ending. That's why it has an arrow on both ends. It does not have an end point. It does not have a start point. It's just going and going and going and going. It is named with 2 points that are on it. It can have 10 different points on it, and when you name it, you can name it with whatever 2 points you want to name it as. And you represent it with a double arrowed line. So when you did your IXL today, it asked you to select, is it a line, is it a ray, is it a line segment, and you had to pick which way you labeled it. Well, you label lines with the double arrows. So here's your example. This is a line, and we label it as line AB. So we make sure we put the arrow on both sides with the 2 letters underneath. We could add to this. We could put a C here, and we could put a D here. And we could name this line AC, AB, AD, BD, CB, DC, DA. It wouldn't matter as long as we pick 2 points on that line to name it. Does that make sense? And as long as we make sure we put the double arrow above it. That represents a line. Questions on point or line? Anybody? Dustin, what's your question? No? Okay, I'm going to move on. I know. Mrs. Miller, you're going really fast and I didn't get to write it all down. These are on the computer. They're online. They're everywhere. If you don't even want to write, you don't have to. All right, so then the next one is a line segment. A line segment is a part of a line with 2 endpoints. So it has a beginning and an end point on each side. We represent a line segment without arrows. So we would represent it with that simple line above it, and we do the start and the end. So our 2 letters are the 2 points that make our line segment. So this line segment is line segment CD. We can also take our previous example with the line and label line segments, because we can label line segment AC, line segment CB, line segment BD, line segment A to B, line segment A to D, line segment C to D, however we want to label that. But inside of a line, there are line segments because there's a stop point and a start point. So you may be given a line and they may ask you to label the line segment in that line. So the stop point and the start point, we label it without arrows. So then the next one is the ray. The ray is a collection of points that have a beginning point. So they have a start point. And then they extend forever in one direction. So there's only an arrow on one side of the line. We call it an endpoint because anytime that there's a point, it's called an endpoint. I look at this and go, that's where I start, and I keep going out this way. Okay, so that's why I say it has a beginning spot, but it's really called, definition-wise, the end point. Okay, and we represent it with the line arrow. So this would be our ray AG, and a ray only has one arrow on it. Pretty simple, right? So we have a point. What's a point, Evan? What's a point? What's the definition for a point? Okay, so it's a location in space represented by a dot, right? How do we label that or call that, Kayla? A point. So we would say, like for this one, it would be point A, right? So then what is a line, Haley?
A line is an end. It doesn't have any end points.
Okay, so it's a line that goes on forever with a collection of points on it. No end point. How do we label a line, Connie?
A line. Okay.
What's the sim?
It's just like the line that you put a little arrow in it.
Okay, a double arrowed line. So then what is a line segment, Max?
Part of a line with two endpoints.
Two endpoints, how do we label that?
It's just
Cameron.
How do we label that?
Yep.
It'd be the line with the two endpoints with the letter.
So no endpoints, it's just going to be a simple line and then the letters underneath it. And then what is a ray? Dustin? A line with an endpoint, correct? Goes in one direction. Caitlin, how do we label it?
With the letter.
What symbol do we use?
Do a little dot and arrow. I mean a line and an arrow.
Just a line with a single arrow, okay? All right, so now we can go into angles. And an angle is simply two rays that share an endpoint. They have the same endpoint, and they go out in different directions. We call it angle ABC or angle CBA, whichever order we want, as long as the common point, the endpoint, is in the middle of those two letters. So here's your example. We have angle KRL or angle LRK. Either way is correct. And when we label it with our little angle symbol. This is the angle symbol. So as long as you keep this point, that letter, in the middle, you can label it any way you want. Does that make sense to everyone? That point right there, that letter R, is our vertex. It's the common endpoint of an angle. So when they ask you to label the vertex A, they want the point that they both have in common. That common endpoint to be the vertex. Does anyone know what we use to measure an angle? What's the cool little thing we use to measure an angle? Anybody know what it's called?
It's like half a circle.
Think about that so that when you come to class tomorrow, you can tell me what we use. Because tomorrow we're going to start measuring those pretty little angles. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is a plane. A plane is a flat surface that extends forever in all directions, okay? Think of it as a piece of paper. This is a plane. This piece of paper is a plane. My computer table is a plane, okay? And it can go out in both directions, all four, forever and ever and ever. We will label it with a lowercase letter. So if they have plane X or plane P in uppercase, they may put it as an uppercase. When you write it, it needs to be lowercased. I feel like elementary right there. Okay? So this would be called plane P. All right, some other vocabulary words you need to know. Intersect is when they cross each other. So if two line segments cross each other, an example would look like this. These line segments intersect. Okay? Collinear points all lie on the same line. Remember, a line goes forever in both directions. A, B, C, and F are all collinear. They all lay on the same line. And then the last one is coplanar, planar, and they all lay in the same plane. So if this is plane A, they all lay in the same plane. They're all on the same area, location, plane. And then I was trying to think of a new word for plane, but there really isn't one. The other two words you're going to come across are perpendicular and parallel. And we have talked about that in here already. But if something is perpendicular, what does it form? Katie? Well, to be specific, it would be what we call a 90-degree angle. That would be perpendicular. So an X, in essence, is somewhat correct, but as long as it forms a right angle, 90-degree angle, they are perpendicular. Parallel means that they will never, ever cross each other. Railroad tracks are parallel. All right. Here's your assignment. Oh, Mrs. Miller can't spell today. Complete page 161 in your book and the worksheet on the back table. There are 2 parts to page 161 on the website, or on the Business Lab folder. $161. They're not in there yet.